1 week season.
Today on the DFS Lab, StatATL is going back to Lamar Jackson. Thinks that it's only a matter of time before that breakout performance is coming, and pairing him with Jamar Chase. I love this game environment, the Bengals and the Ravens, and we're going to attack it today, Stat. I think that you're onto something here. So, guys, with that, welcome in to the DFS Lab presented by 1 week season. You guys know the drill. We're building for week 15 on DraftKings. He is StatATL. I am Cheeseman, your host. Guys, if you would not mind dropping a like on the video, subscribing to the channel, we would love that. And with that, Stat, how you doing, man? How was the weekend, man, in the in the DFS streets?
Man, the weekend was good. I was actually out of town. I was up in Chicago. Funny enough, actually met up and grabbed a bourbon and a bite to eat with one of our subscribers, Frost Six in the Discord. So
where'd you guys go? Where'd you guys go to eat? Just kind of like a sports bar or something a little nicer?
Yeah, we actually met up on Thursday and we went out to a bourbon bar, and he's a big bourbon fan. And for those folks who follow me, if you want to follow my bourbon journey, you can follow along on Instagram at for like FORE, if you can't tell I like golf, at for bourbon and golf. So yeah, Grady, Frost Six over here, a bourbon fan. So we went and grabbed a bourbon, went out to the sports bar afterwards, and watched most of the Thursday night football game. So awesome,
And it was a good game too.
Yeah, it was an exciting game, and I always embrace meeting folks from the community. I think people who have tuned in this season and last season, we try to share these pictures. Yeah. Happy. I do some traveling for my job, and always if I'm in a city where I know subscribers live, I'm happy to try to connect and put faces with names.
Yeah, man, absolutely love that. Yeah, man, good stuff. And yeah, guys, if you didn't catch that, for like FORE, like when you hit a bad shot or you actually drive the ball into the group in front of you. I know you've never done that. For bourbon and golf, right? On Instagram.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, man, the weekend outside of that was fine. Wasn't a week that we binked anything, but we didn't get crushed. So generally that's kind of the goal, is if I'm not near the top of a leaderboard in a contest, and again, I'm not playing hundreds of lineups, so I feel like we were on some of the right places. Again, I play pretty tight, so onward and upward to week 15.
That's right, man. Absolutely. I did want to ask you, I know that we're nearing the time of best ball. Have you been getting into the best ball playoff mode yet?
Oh man, great question. So funny enough, I got some new swag from our friends over at Drafters today.
Love that.
Got their t-shirt for regular season best ball. And yeah, I've started jumping into the playoff best ball streets. Our friends over at Underdog actually released all of their contests yesterday, like all their main contests, the gauntlet, the mitten, the little mitten. And so I will probably have my strategy article for this year probably out next week. And I kind of jumped into those streets last night trying to get an idea of ADPs so that I can try to properly educate our subscribers and folks tuning in. But yeah, I'll probably start doing some live drafts on my my YouTube channel, as well as the 1 week season YouTube channel within the next week. Probably around this time, maybe a little earlier, Monday, Tuesday in the week.
You're already drafting, even though you still have kind of playoff. There's still things that could change in terms of teams that are going to be in.
Yeah, so that's to me that's one of the edges. If you're willing to be, if you're willing to take on a little bit more risk. So for example, like in just kind of looking at how the drafts that I did last night, I just fired a few, maybe 3 or 4 in the smallest contest just to try to get an idea. But you take a look at a team like the Lions, who are not currently in the playoffs. Although I would say they're a reasonable likelihood to make to make the playoffs. So they've got the Rams this week, and then they've got two. I don't know. I should have the schedule. I don't have it remember. They've got two very easy games that they should win, and then they've got the Bears week 18. If they win 3 out of the 4 games, even if they lose to the Rams this weekend, then they win 3 games that they'll likely be favored in all of them, they'll make the playoffs. And to me, that's not a stretch. Like, that seems very reasonable. However, like, their players, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, those guys get drafted really, really late. So, like, again, they're not guaranteed to make the playoffs, and they're no guarantee that they even have a deep run in the playoffs. But again, their draft capital to acquire those guys at this time is really low. Same thing with like the Chiefs, who have a lower percentage to make the playoffs. But if they were to make the playoffs, like Rashee Rice is going to be, maybe a 2nd round pick. He goes in the 8th, 9th, 10th round now in the drafts that I was doing. So if you're willing to take on a little bit more risk, those are the type of drafts that I personally would probably be doing now. Like, I don't know that I would be doing a ton of builds where I was, and maybe this is way in the weeds for our DFS labs, but I don't know that I would be doing too many drafts that are built around, the Patriots and,
exactly.
The teams that are for sure that everybody has so much comfort in, because that's where everybody who's in those drafts want to draft those teams because those are the comfortable picks to make. And so you're saying, hey, I want to draft Rams. Well, 2 other teams want to draft Rams. So, you're kind of swimming upstream with everybody trying to grab the same resources, where at this point you could say, hey, like, I'm happy to grab, start off with Josh Jacobs or whatnot and say, hey, the Packers have a really strong chance, or, maybe some AFC teams that are underappreciated, and then grab Lions because the Lions are basically free right now. Or the Chiefs, or I mean? You get the picture. Same thing with the Texans. These are teams that nobody wants, but they'll likely be in the playoffs. They've got decent defenses. Like, they could make a run. Detroit's got a really strong offense. Like, so to me, that's the angle if you're drafting now, is be a little bit riskier with your picks.
No, that totally makes sense. And yeah, exactly. If those teams do end up making the playoffs, then those rosters could potentially have, pieces like the Lions that no one else really has in your pods or whatever, as you're trying to advance. Great stuff, man. Well, with that, unless I'm forgetting anything else, let's jump into some Week 15 here, and I'll jump into a contest here, but I know you did your Week 15 first look. I did read it, and as I'm kind of looking at this slate, I think probably one spot I definitely kind of jumped out to me right away was Jackson Dart at home against the Commanders. Just a pretty hapless feeling Commanders team right now, and then also Joe Burrow. I know we talked about building with Lamar Jackson, but Joe Burrow at home against the Ravens. The Bengals, they just tend to play, I think we can see, based on past results, they tend to play very aggressively against the Ravens. And so you could see a Cincinnati team come out, pass the ball a lot early, and Joe Burrow put up huge numbers. I obviously like the Lamar Jackson angle as well, but those are kind of 2 spots that kind of stood out to me early on when I kind of glanced at the slate. Obviously, you got the big games, of course, like the Lions and the Rams, that is going to attract attention. The Bills and the Patriots, which myself and Hilo built a Josh Allen stack on the Tuesday DFS lab. So I'll throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts?
Oh, man. I think my very first thought, just kind of high level from a macro type perspective on the slate, this is the first time in, I don't even know, 10 weeks or so that we've kind of had this larger 13 game main slate. We've been having these 9, 10, 11 game main slates week after week after week. We've basically got all the best offenses on this slate. I guess we've got the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, but the Thursday night game tomorrow or today when this airs, is the Bucks and the Falcons. I'm not saying there's not a lot of fantasy goodness there. There are some pieces. You've got Bijan, you've got some of the Bucks. And then the Monday night game is the Dolphins and the Steelers. Like, you've got a lot of the main teams with exciting offenses, a lot of good matchups on this main slate. So, I think that's one of the things that as you're building rosters, you kind of have to keep in mind. It's not only just who am I playing, but who am I not playing? And what does that mean for my builds? Because there's 26 teams on this slate. So you've got, this is a slate where I think last week or 2 weeks ago, like the main contest, main single entries, I'm not quite the Millie Maker, but a lot of like larger field contests were won at like 205, 210. Like, this is a slate where that's not going to be the case. Exactly. Like, you just got, unless we get a lot of games disappointing their totals, you've got a bunch of 50-plus point games. Again, 13 games, 2016. Like, this is going to be a team where you're really aiming for 235, 250 is what's going to likely take down some of those larger field tournaments if I was guessing this week.
Yeah, exactly, man. This is going to be – I mean, I feel like this is one of the last weeks, honestly, where we're going to have all the best teams on the slate and the amount of games that we have. I mean, week 18, they will all be on Sunday, but week 18 can be such a strange week. Week 16 and 17, you have a lot of Saturday games, or just week 16. Yeah, there's the 2 Saturday games. There's actually a decent slate on the for week 16, but week 17, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. There's only a total of 7 games on the main slate. So this should be good. All right. So where do you want to start this week's build?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of teased it leading in, but yeah, I mean, to me, I'm probably going to lean into some uncertainty here with the Bengals and Ravens game. I like both sides of the game. I think you could play Burrow or Lamar. I don't know that your build has to be that much different, again, because they're only $200 difference in price. So, if you decide that you really prefer one side over another, I'm certainly on board with either of those sides. I think at quarterback, I think Lamar, we haven't really seen it this season, but I think Lamar really offers a ceiling that very few other quarterbacks offer on the slate. That 30-plus point upside with his rushing ability. Now, we haven't seen the rushing as much recently. We did see last week was kind of, really leaned on his legs for the first time in a while since earlier in the season. Yeah. Back, I think this was his highest rushing outing since week 4. And I think we've talked about it on previous streams or maybe just in Discord of how he may be trying to play through an injury, but he looked a lot better in the game last week. His metrics back that up. And so I want to take a shot on Lamar kind of having a big game here. And I think in order for us to play Lamar, like, we're basically saying, I think that this is not a 21-17 type game, or else at his price at 6,400, like, again, with 26 quarterbacks on this slate, like, if you're playing a quarterback like Lamar, a pricier quarterback, you're basically saying I'm expecting him to give me 25, 30 plus points, or else the roster is dead for first place, to be candid. So
yep,
I think that if we're playing Lamar, we're kind of banking on a little bit of his legs helping you get to that score. Like, Lamar's not the type of quarterback that throws for 400 yards and, 4 touchdowns, where, you see that sometimes from guys like Stafford or Goff or, honestly, even Burrow has those 350, 400 yard, 404 passing touchdown games. That's not what you get out of Lamar. Like a ceiling type game out of Lamar is like 250 yards with 3 touchdowns, but then he gives you 50 yards rushing and a touchdown, or, you get 2 rushing touchdowns out of Lamar. So to me, when I play Lamar, he's generally not a quarterback that I double stack, because for his ceiling, I'm expecting him to take some of the scoring with his legs. So for me, I think on this matchup, I really want to lean into one of his tight ends. Like that is on paper the best matchup. And so I think you could either go Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely. I think Likely will probably be less owned. So let's kind of lean into Likely here. He's a little cheaper. And I want to do that just because I want to play some studs. Like in doing my first look write-up, like there's a couple of pay-up running backs. There's a bunch of pay-up wide receivers that I want to play. And so if I'm paying up at quarterback, relatively paying up at quarterback, I'm going to have to find some savings somewhere. So,
yes,
I think
absolutely.
You're good. I think if we're going to bank on Lamar having this huge game, it means that, the Bengals are keeping this game close. So where is the likeliest outcome for that for a high scoring game? It's with Jamar Chase. So I like putting in Jamar Chase here. When these teams met just 2 weeks ago, 14 targets, 100 plus yards, didn't catch a touchdown, but you get a similar type game, 100 plus yards and a touchdown. And now you're kind of cooking with gas. You're getting 25, 30 points plus out of him. And that's kind of the game that we're looking for here.
Yep. Love it, dude. Love it. I have not gone back and looked at what Chase's game logs are historically against Baltimore. I feel like they've been pretty good, but Jamar Chase, if this is a competitive game, certainly the type of game where he could have a huge score.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just what Jamar Chase has done. It's just like what opposing wideouts have done against the Ravens all year.
Right.
I mean, just looking back over the last couple of weeks, you've got DK Metcalf went for 148. Jamar Chase, we talked about that 110 like 2 weeks ago. Jalen Naylor went like 125. Roma Dunze went for over 100.
Some of these are not a murderer's row. I mean, DK Metcalf, that was the first good game he's had in a while. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then even going back early in the season, like Keon Coleman, who's done literally nothing all year, he went for over 100 yards. And, and a touchdown. I think Keon Coleman had, like a 30-point game against these guys back in week 1. So, yeah, I mean, I like leaning into Jamar Chase. I think you could, I think that you can, if you wanted to even double stack this game on the Cincinnati side, like you could play another Bengals pass catcher here. A lesser expensive one, maybe you're playing one of the tight ends or something like that, where you're just kind of saying, I think this is a 35-31 game, and Lamar outscores Burrow because they're basically the same salary. So you could lean into you could play
Voss.
You could play a Yoshi Voss, you could play a Tinsley, you could lean into Noah Fant or Gesicki at their prices, and just say, I think one of those guys gets me 5 for 50 and a touchdown, or 4 for 40 and a touchdown. And maybe on this slate, that's not great, but that's still keeping you on that 225, 250 point pace. And you're just kind of getting 4 bets right if this game ends up being like 35-31 or something like that. So I don't think people will do that. I don't know that that's what we're going to do on this build. We could, but I think we'll kind of stop there, and we'll just kind of see how the roster kind of builds out from there.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. So where do you want to go next? You want to fit in another stud or two, or are you looking at kind of a value piece, defense?
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at this slate, like what really stood out to me is this Lions Rams game. And it's a huge point total. The Rams have over a 30-point team total. And they are such a consolidated offense, such a condensed offense. And then when you look to see, like, what have teams done against the Lions, like, opposing wide receivers have absolutely smashed the Lions all year. You've got, again, the same row of games that we just read off against the Ravens. You've got that and some against the Lions. So to me, like, this could be a week where you play, and this is an aggressive approach, but you play one of Puka Nacua or Devontae Adams on every roster, and just say, hey, like, I think one of them has a really strong likelihood of giving you one of these, 6 for 100 and 2 touchdown type games. Like we've seen both of them do it. And this is one of their best matchups all year, at home, in a dome, no weather, to fight with in December. So
bit of a run funnel too. Lions are not too easy to run on, I believe.
Yeah. So, to me, I like even being aggressive here. Like let's throw in Puka Nacua. Let's play the most expensive wide receiver, and just see kind of where that leads us. So
awesome. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we got Puka. Do you want to bring back from Detroit?
We could. I think the challenge with that right now is the salary.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if I ran somebody back from Detroit, it's probably Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's Jameson Williams. Both of those guys are $6K plus.
Plus we already got.
Or if, even if it's Gibbs at 8,800, like this roster doesn't have the salary for that.
Yep, that works. Okay, so running back. You want to look at running back next?
Yeah, let's look at running back. I think if we're expecting 4,600, left to play, this is probably not a spot where we can play Christian McCaffrey. He's in an awesome spot this week against the Titans at home. San Francisco, I think right now is either the 6 or the 7 seed, but I think they have the same record as the number 1 seed. So. Yeah. It's one of those spots where they're not going to be taking their foot off the pedal. Like they want to make sure they're winning these games. But I don't know that CMC fits on this build. So to me, I think we're looking more mid-range running backs on this build since I'm paying up twice at wide receiver. I did really like Travis Etienne. He kind of stands out to me at home against the Jets. His price is a little elevated at 6,500 because I think his top game all year is like 22, 23 points, 22.5. But this is a spot where I don't know how owned he's going to be. And I'm expecting the Jaguars to run the ball plenty. Like I don't expect the Jets to really put up much of a fight for them. And so I do like this piece for Jacksonville. I think this is a good spot. And I think what's kind of going under the radar is the fact that, like, if you look at like the last 4 weeks, so basically post when the Jets traded that prolific run stopper, Quinnen Williams, like they've allowed 10 touchdowns to running backs in the last 4 weeks. Like they are getting gashed by running backs. They just are not able to stop the run lately. So I think the fact that maybe people will look and say Travis Etienne hasn't put up a big score, 6,500, too much to pay for him. I'm leaning into it as the stars are kind of aligning. We saw Bashal Tutin get his lowest touch count, I think, of the season last week, and so I like leaning into Etienne here. I think this is a good spot for him. And then again, we're going to have to find even more value at running back this week. And so another guy that really stood out to me on my first look, and I'd love to even maybe consider pairing it with the Texans D, although, again, I don't know that we're going to have the salary for that on this build, is Woody Marks. So, Woody Marks continues to get up the lion's share of the backfield. And Nick Chubb, I think Nick Chubb is likely to miss next week. Suffered that ankle injury, didn't come back to the game. So I'm expecting us to continue to see similar to what we saw last week with Woody Marks seeing 20, 25 touches. He's got some involvement in the pass game there. You're seeing games of 3, 4, 5, multiple games of 5 targets. I wouldn't be surprised to see him touch the ball 20, 25 times in a very plus matchup on paper. Again, Houston right there in the playoff hunt too. I think at 5,600, he very well offers you that 20, 25 point option. You see back in week 4, he had that 28 point game. Again, against a bottom tier defense or bottom tier opposing like run defense in Arizona. So I like this spot for Woody Marks.
Yeah, finally we got a value running back that, he'll certainly be popular, but at 5,600 certainly is pretty much a must with the workload he's probably going to get.
Yeah, so I think from here, let's plug in a D, and I think with 3,700 left remaining, I to me there's like 4 or 5 really strong options at defense. Most of them are pay up options. You've got the Seahawks at home, getting either third string quarterback there, or getting Phillip Rivers, maybe starting 44-year-old or 45-year-old Phillip Rivers. I like that. I think the Texans are a strong matchup here at home against the Cardinals. But again, we don't have the salary for those pay-up options. So to me, if we're looking at a cheaper option, to me, the best option on the slate as a pay-down option is probably the Saints at home against Carolina. They basically in the first meeting of the year a couple of weeks back, they basically stacked the box and said, we're going to make Bryce Young beat us, and Bryce Young was not able to beat them. Bryce Young, I think they only accounted for 7 points. So now the Saints are at home. I wouldn't expect that philosophy to change much. I'm going to assume that they're going to stack the box and say, we're not going to let you run. And again, that gives you more opportunities for those interceptions, for those, pick sixes and stuff like that. So I like that. Gives us a little bit more flexibility here. I think in an ideal world, what I'd love to do here is lean into that New York Giants game that we talked about. And I think that's F1. I think that's Terry McLaurin, 5,400. So to me, this is a really interesting situation for the Commanders. Zach Ertz suffered that gruesome injury last week. He was one of their primary targets every single week. And I just don't see a Ben Sinnott type filling in that role. So I'm just expecting higher target counts for Deebo Samuel, for Terry McLaurin. And the Giants are a super friendly matchup to opposing wide receivers. You're likely going to see Marcus Mariota for the Commanders. Very capable quarterback. And to me, I think both McLaurin and Deebo are like 52, 53, 5,400, somewhere in that low fives. Like, I think it's a reasonable likelihood that you get a 20-point score. Something like what you got week 13 from McLaurin, a 6-7 receptions for 80, 90 yards and a touchdown, 20-something points, kind of keeping you on that 200-point. I feel like it's unlikely that Washington completely fails against the Giants. Like, the Giants are just not that daunting of a defense. So
yeah, it's that 6 or 7 receptions. Did you do that on purpose?
Yes, 6-7.
Goodness,
what I'd love to be able to do here, I'd love to be able to get to Theo Johnson, but I think that we're $100 short.
Yep, we are. Oh man, yeah, just 100 short. Look at that.
There's no cheaper defense that I want to play. I think that you could, if you wanted to go I prefer McLaurin, but you could go Deebo Samuel, and then he's 100 or 200 cheaper, and then go Theo Johnson. I'm happy to not do that here. I think we could lean into a little correlation here, and I think if we don't edit anything, I think you've got two kind of straightforward, solid options here. Option one, I think, is to play double tight end and go Mason Taylor here and kind of lean into, okay, Travis Etienne's having this big game. He's rushing for 100 yards and a touchdown or two, and the Jets are playing catch up and they're forced to have to throw the ball more. And I don't mind going Mason Taylor. Again, you've seen some elevated volume recently. Only has that one touchdown, but again, seeing targets, if we can get that 5 for 50, add a touchdown, you're now at 16 points at basically 3K. It's giving you a 5 point, 2-3x multiplier. That's a really strong game for a value piece. And that feels well within a realistic range of outcomes in this game. And Jacksonville again. Or you could, instead of Mason Taylor, you could kind of lean into that discussion that we talked about earlier and play like a Mike Gesicki here. That would also fit. I think he's 3,300. So that could also fit. And then you're really just leaning into that Baltimore-Cincinnati game. With the same build that we have on here, like if you prefer Burrow, we have the salary if you want to go Burrow, Jamar Chase on this build, and literally keep the same build with Isaiah Likely as your run back. So either of those work. But I think I'm happy with where we landed.
Yeah, man, love it. So the final build that we did land with, for those of you guys listening on the pod, went big with the Baltimore and the Bengals stack. Lamar Jackson, Isaiah Likely with the Jamar Chase bringback. And then Stat loved the spot for Puka Nacua, so we definitely fit him in there as well. Filled it out with the running backs, Travis Etienne, Woody Marks, and then you also added in Terry McLaurin, Mason Taylor for little double tight end action, and then the Saints defense. And that wraps up the build, guys. Stat, great stuff as always. Any final thoughts, man, before we send this one off as we look ahead to what should hopefully be a very high-scoring Week 15?
Yeah, hoping to see a lot of our listeners and OWS subscribers atop the leaderboards, and hoping to see a lot of you friendly folks who are listening in those playoff best ball lobbies.
That's right. I was just about to mention that, guys. We appreciate you joining the DFS Lab. Make sure to check out StatATL on the his YouTube which is just StatATL, or the 1 week season YouTube and Twitter's. He'll be you're live, right? You go live.
I'll be live, probably going once or twice a week starting next week.
And what time?
Probably 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern. Schedule dependent.
Okay, yeah. So 8 or 9 p.m. Eastern, 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific for you guys. So yeah, guys, check it out. Exciting time of the year as we kind of get into, obviously we're in the playoffs for just fantasy, the season-long stuff, fantasy football, but also just as we round down in at DFS as well. So guys, thanks for joining us. Hope to see you on the 1 week season site throughout the week, and we will catch you guys next week.